Good afternoon. I'm Mark Bailey from BBGA. Welcome to the third in a series of videos that we're running at the moment. We're trying to inform our members of what's going on through the current crisis. And we're very fortunate today to have David Harding, the Deputy Director at DfT, who's got a particular interest in the GA sector. Welcome, David, and thanks for zooming in today.
Hi, Mark. Thanks very much for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to see everyone in a good relaxed mode for our working. And I think we've got our lighting just about right, haven't we?
Yeah, it's really, perfect.
Look, just out of interest, we're all getting used to this remote working. Tell me, how has this been for you from a personal perspective and from a business perspective?
Yeah, so I guess everyone's getting used to the new challenge. I've actually been amazed at how good technology has been. It's enabled so much working. So, we were able to have these meetings on Zoom, on Teams, and it actually feels like you can keep in touch with your team. But I have to say, like from a personal perspective, I found it very challenging. Both myself and my wife are key workers. My wife's an NHS psychologist. So we've had to kind of shift our working patterns to look after our two very young girls as well. So it's been quite hard. I'm having to kind of catch up a lot at night time when they're asleep, and just kind of, feel like you're always behind on things. But that said, government's a really good place. We've been really flexible and supportive. They've understood, and the technology allows us to work flexibly. So apart from a few time critical things, I've been able to generally stay on top of things, I hope. And then I have to say, then from a kind of more business point of view, whilst the technology has been great, it's certainly weird not being in the office. You just don't get the kind of same vibe, the same little chats at the tea points, just seeing people and the odd little laughs you have that you just don't get naturally in the day. And even just walking between meetings, a bit of chit chat, and kind of, meeting externals face to face every now and again. So it's a really big change. I still find it quite bizarre. But like I say, the fact we can do video meetings has been incredible. Because if it was all done through dial-in phone calls or emails, I think it'd be particularly challenging. How about you? How have you found it?
It's been really good, actually, seeing people develop, and a bit like yourselves. There's some reticence. It's not necessarily generational. It's technology, really. Some people are comfortable using the medium. Others like to do phone. Others like to avoid contact and go for emails. But as people have got more comfortable with it, particularly when you know a group, if you've got an established team and you're working with them, I found it to work really well. So I've got to say there is a potential shape for the future going forward where it can be more efficient. So yeah, like you, there's good and bad to it. So
definitely,
let's make our best from what's going on here.
Yeah. Motto is, how can we exploit the best of this technology? And change the way we work in future.
So now a quick change of question, really. In truth, just to let the members know, we've been in contact quite a lot through various activities in the past months, even before we got into this crisis. But actually, within this crisis, we've been writing some open letters to yourselves and for the minister. And I just wanted to talk about some of the issues there, because you've been trying to help us on those as they've come up. I'd like to sort of take one at a time, if I can. Look at the border force premium charging. How have you found working with that? Because you're working cross department.
Yeah, so to be honest, we're trying to be, as far as we practically can be, one government in terms of the response. The overall government approach is clear on the social distancing, the public health guidance, and the package of measures are put together across government. So we do work very collaboratively. That said, there's always challenges because departments come from different perspectives on things. So if we need to have those conversations just to kind of agree the best way forward to balance our overall objectives. So there are some times where there are things we know industry want, but for a Home Office point of view are much sort of trickier to kind of deal with. But we do have very collaborative working relationships, and I think people do listen and try to kind of move forward in the right way. So all I can say is, where these issues come up, we're grateful that the sector raises them, so we're aware, because sometimes we're not always fully aware, and that allows us to have those conversations and make those calls, and come up with a cross-government solution.
With the premium charging, actually, that's a good example where we saw some movement, and then we saw some changing in agreements. We're able to feed it back, and that fed through again round the circle. And we've got a fairly universal position now in terms of the approach by Border Force to premium charging. So that was a good resolution, but it may not have happened unless we had that closed loop process going on.
That's right, and I think I have to say it counts across the board here. So when things first arise, a lot of people would think about it in a business as usual kind of way, and policy in that context is very different. And obviously, over time, people have realised this is exceptional circumstances, and the way we do policy and the way we work with each other has to be different and a bit more innovative, a bit more forward-leaning. So I think that has also helped. There's been a big change in mindset for government and the civil service, as for everyone in all industries and sectors. But yeah, we're glad it's kind of got to a positive resolution.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks very much for that one. On a slightly different angle, a lot of our members are SMEs by the definition, and some of them work on airports, some of them work off airport. And it's been quite difficult to get things like business rate relief and rent relief for those that are on airports. And I just wondered what thoughts you might have on that as a topic and what position you're trying to take.
Yeah, so some of these policies obviously led out to, government-led, but led through Treasury, HMRC and other departments. The policies are very clear. I think the guidance is out there, and who qualifies and who doesn't and how to apply. That's all been set up quite clearly. There's obviously been an absolutely unprecedented set of measures that we've never seen, historically. So we're hoping that businesses can all access some of those, and the ones that are appropriate for them. Obviously, there are some where, people, some businesses are facing particularly tough times, and differential impacts. So, while we encourage them all to kind of look at all the measures there are some that where the way they're applied is just differently. So on some of the business rate retention ones, for example, a lot of that is devolved to local authorities. So it will vary, how local authorities decide to deal with some of those tax reliefs. So there are some things where government can kind of set the overall framework, and then local authorities and other decision makers will kind of have the ultimate decision making authority. But we've tried to listen very closely to industry, and the one thing I in particular have been flagging is that the industry is made up of very different groups of people, different parts of the sector. Commercial is very different to business aviation, very different to kind of general recreational aviation. And there are different organisations within that, be it training schools, be it maintenance organisations, be it small innovative companies. They are all facing different challenges, and whilst there are a set of measures there, they will all need to kind of approach them in slightly different ways. And like I say, for us, and we'll come on to this a bit more later, we want to engage across the board to understand how all those issues vary, where they vary, and if we need to look a bit more bespoke support. And I think you've probably seen the message on support measures. So there's a lot of them which are there for people to access, where businesses can show that they have explored all of those and used them in as much detail as possible, and they've explored other areas of kind of raising capital, accessing loans, etc. And they've exhausted everything. Then there is a potential to come forward and ask for more bespoke support. Obviously, there's a new process. There's a process around that. But that is, if people don't know that is the position.
We'll just make sure that we've got those links, and then we'll share them out with the members for those alternates, because being fair, a lot of members have tried down all of the regular paths as any normal business would be, and sometimes we can be a bit tailored. So that option you've just mentioned is probably quite important for our members.
Good.
Okay. One of the other things that wanted to talk about actually was the more difficult experience we had on European front with the ETS scheme for the European Union. Would you like to just talk about where we are as a UK government with that?
Yeah, so it's a very tricky position, really. Obviously, the ETS is an EU-wide commitment which we're signed up to, and obviously still applicable whilst we were within the EU. But at the same time, the government has made a very strong ambition and target around net zero. So the environmental sustainability agenda is a very very big one. I mean that was evident in the fact that the BBJ annual conference just was it last months ago, was all focused around sustainability and how we move forward in that direction. So there is there's a strong commitment to environmental issues, and this is one of those which the government has been very signed up to. Obviously, because of the exceptional circumstances we're in, we've explored whether there was any room. We explored whether there was any room for movement in that. If there was anything we could do to kind of ease the pressures. On balance, the decision was taken, but that actually this is still an EU competence and it's still a priority for the government. So whilst we appreciate, it was challenging for people to put forward the kind of compliance assessments. The decision was taken, but that was the right thing to do. And actually, we having seen some follow up, it sounds like everyone did comply. We had very high compliance with all of it, so we're grateful for the to the businesses affected that have kind of complied with the measures in that situation. In this situation, obviously, from your point of view, I know you can't win them all, but we have tried to kind of look into it and test it, and we reached the outcome we reached.
Yeah, taking your point about conference, just for clarity, I don't think it was a desire for any members to move away from that environmental position. This was pure business, cash flow, money out at this point in time, and where we have things like that, or maybe access to slots, etc., and looking at that, where you're paying for a service that you're not drawing down on. It's not trying to get something for nothing. It's trying to get a bit of breathing space in order to get to that point in the future. So just making that clear for anyone else who might be watching us.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate that. And I know that's come up in many contexts, because, all the operating costs at the moment are, eat into, whatever limited profits might still be made at the moment.
Yeah, we are seeing very dramatic reactions within aviation as a whole, aren't we, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen, I think, from a flight's point of view, traffic's 90% lower than usual for this time of year, and that's been fairly constant for the last few weeks. It's just exceptional. We've never seen anything like this. So the industry's come through big crises before, following things like 9/11, the financial crisis, and various other events. And there's been some previous pandemics which potentially affected the UK slightly less, but this one is obviously had global impacts right across all parts of aviation, and demand has absolutely plummeted. So we're conscious, this just led to kind of unprecedented situation in terms of how companies act in that world, how consumers act, what governments are doing to kind of stop travel and allow travel. And financially for businesses in the sector, it's obviously extremely challenging. You can build in some degree of resilience, but something like this, which is sustained, is much harder to kind of plan for. So we've kind of acknowledged this impact is absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah, we may touch on that on something a little later on when we're thinking about the recovery side of it.
Yeah.
David, on another topic altogether, I'd like to talk about what our colleagues in regulation are doing, the CAA, and I know you guys keep a weather eye on that. Would you like to tell us what's going on there? Because they've been trying to be very helpful as far as industry is concerned.
Yeah, so look, I mean, we work very closely with CAA across the board on regulatory matters. My team we have oversight of the CAA relationship. and close relationship on the aviation safety side. So we've been heavily involved in some of the exemptions that have come through. I think CA have been incredible across the board. So they've been supporting all the kind of operational understanding of what's going on, working closely with industry, supporting the repatriation efforts, and doing lots to support industry throughout this period. They put a freeze on their charges temporarily. And as you say, the really significant thing has been the kind of regulatory flexibility. So that's, number of things that, wouldn't normally be the case, but extending the validity of pilots' licensing, of cabin crew requirements, of requirements for training organisations, particularly where you're supposed to have face-to-face training issues, which can't be done at the moment, and various other things. There's been a whole suite of exemptions that have come through, and the CA have worked through those with some of them with my safety team really quickly and rapidly and professionally, in a spirit in line with the unprecedented situation going on. There's also, you should be aware, there's been a lot of work through international organisations, so ICAO and EASA have also been looking at some of these exemptions and trying to kind of push for some consistency across countries, which is really important in the international context of aviation. So the CA and our teams have been working very closely to kind of do that, and doing it at pace. So these are the things the sector was asking for very quickly. And whilst it took time on some of them, we got some of the big ones through very quickly, and we've been working through everything else as quickly as possible. And it goes beyond safety. So there's been a number on aviation security alleviations as well, which are really important. And as you say, all add to the operational costs to industry. So we're glad they've been helpful. We do need to think about the return to normality and how those measures kind of pan out over time. Whether there needs to be further work, but that's something that, as will be going on through part of the restart and recovery work.
Yeah, I'll come back to that restart and recovery work. I just wanted to reinforce what you have just said. We've been having industry meetings again with lots of Zoom activity, and been sharing what's been going on our flight operations and airworthiness communities. And I've got to say, one of the key questions is, what problems are you having? What aren't you getting? And we've not been hearing anything in terms of what they're not getting. So it's only been the problems have all been solved as they've come along. So if nothing else, this will provoke one or two people to come along and say what they haven't got after they've seen our video. But generally speaking, it's been really good. So industry has been supportive of what's been going on.
Good.
Now, before, sorry, David, I'll let you go. Go
I was just saying, very good. Very glad to hear that. It's, we want to help as much as possible, and like I said, the CEA have all the knowledge and the kind of regulatory power to kind of make those changes.
Okay, a different topic now. One of the things that everyone's been trying to do is do their bit to assist whatever's going on during this crisis. I know the fixed wing community and the rotary community have been trying to help out. And not everybody appreciates what's going on. I just wondered whether you wanted to share any activities that are occurring.
Yeah, so look, I mean, the offers of support from industry have been so welcomed. We can't say thank you enough for it. The whole country's kind of reacted in a very positive way. You see the kind of way communities coming together, industry are looking at innovative ways of manufacturing new health equipment, and the aviation industry have put forward offers of transporting critical NHS goods, PPE equipment, trying to use drones to get to the Isle of Wight, and encourage things going there where there's no flights, there's no connectivity. So between government and industry, there's been an incredible partnership going on, making these offers, trying to enable the offers. And I have to say, probably one of the hardest things for the sort of team and government dealing with this is because there's been so many offers. Actually working through them all, prioritising and using them effectively has probably been a challenge. So if anyone has put offers forward and for whatever reason they've not been taken up, that's not a slight on the offer. The offers have all been great.
No, it's a lot to coordinate all of those things, isn't it? Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Thank you very much,
all in one,
David.
Yeah, but again, really appreciate the the fourth, particularly whilst there are things where you're asking us to do other help on. So the reciprocity there is really healthy, I think.
Okay. Now, a topic that we've mentioned a couple of times, and it's nice to be in this area, the recovery of aviation. What can you tell me about that initiative?
Yeah, so you should be aware there's a restart, recovery and engagement team that's been set up to kind of really plan through what this looks like. We are distinguishing heavily between restart, which is getting planes, I say planes are still flying, but getting planes flying again, getting more planes flying, getting people flying, thinking about the requirements around the maintenance checks, the pilot checks. The whatever training needs are needed, cabin crew requirements. So there's a lot of operational issues just to kind of get things going again. And then there's a particular issue on the kind of consumer side and the public health side. So how do we make people feel confident that the right processes are there to introduce the health measures and where needed social distancing policies, so people are confident to travel and the industry can start to return to kind of this whatever the new normal is. Which will be quite uncertain for some time. So there's been the restart. Lots of work in terms of how we get things going and what new measures might need to kind of come in as part of that. And then separately, but kind of they all blur into one in the long run. Is what's the recovery look like? So what will the new sector look like? What support measures are needed? What will demand look like? The nature of demand and how that changes given the kind of cost benefit analysis of travel, given people's perceptions of flying, and kind of the health implications.